Welcome to 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 295th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Persian replied, To hear is to obey, and at once followed the wazir into the presence of the caliph, who bade him to be seated, and said to him, O Ali, my heart is heavy within me this night, and it hath come to my ear that thou hast great store of tales and anecdotes. So I desire of thee that thou let me hear what will relieve my despondency and brighten my melancholy." Said he, "O Commander of the Faithful, shall I tell thee what I have seen with my eyes, or what I have heard with my ears?" He replied, "An thou have been not worth the telling, let me hear that." Replied Ali, hearkening in obedience, "Know thou, O Commander of the Faithful, that some years ago I left this my native city of Baghdad on a journey, having with me a lad who carried a light leathern bag. Presently we came to a certain city where, as I was buying and selling, behold, a rascally Kurd fell on me and seized my wallet, perforce saying, 'This is my bag, and all which is in it is my property.' Thereupon I cried aloud, 'Ho, Moslems, one and all, deliver me from the hand of the vilest of oppressors.' But the folk said, 'Come both of you to the Kazi, and abide ye by his judgment with joint consent.' So I agreed to submit myself to such decision, and we were both presented ourselves before the Kazi, who said, 'What bringeth you hither, and what is your case and your quarrel?' Quoth I, 'We are men at difference, who appeal to thee and make complaint, and submit ourselves to thy judgment.' Asked the Kazi, 'Which of you is the complainant?' So the Kurd came forth and said, 'Allah preserve our lord the Kazi. Verily, this bag is my bag, and all that is in it is my swag. It was lost for me, and I found it with this man mine enemy.' The Kazi asked, 'What dost thou lose in it?' The Kurd answered, 'But yesterday I passed a sleepless night by reason of its loss.' 'And it be thy bag?' quoth the Kazi. 'Tell me what is in it.' Quoth the Kurd, 'There were in my bag 2 silver styles for eye powder, and antimony for eyes, and a kerchief for the hands, wherein I had laid 2 gilt cups and 2 candlesticks. Moreover, it contained 2 tents and 2 platters and 2 spoons, and a cushion and 2 leather rugs and 2 ewers and a brass tray and 2 basins and a cooking pot and 2 water jugs and a ladle and sacking needle and a she cat and 2 bitches and a wooden trencher and 2 sacks and 2 saddles and a gown and 2 fur pelisses and a cow and 2 calves and 2 she-goat and 2 sheep and a ewe and 2 lambs and 2 green pavilions and a camel and 2 she-camels and a lioness and 2 lions and she-bear and 2 jackals and a matras and 2 sofas and an upper chamber and 2 saloons and a portico and 2 sitting rooms and a kitchen with 2 doors and a company of Kurds who will bear witness that the bag is in me is my bag.' Then said the Kazi to me, 'O thy Sirrah, what sayest thou?' So I came forward, 'O Commander of the Faithful,' and indeed the Kurd's speech had bewildered me, and said, 'Allah advance our Lord the wallet, save a little ruined tenement, and another without a door, and a dog-house, and a boys' school, and youths playing dice, and tents and tent ropes, and the cities of Basra and Baghdad, and the palace of Shadid bin Adad, and an ironsmith forge, and a fishing net, and cudgels and pickets, and girls and boys, and 1,000 pimps, who will testify that the bag is my bag.' Now when the Kurd heard my words, he wept and wailed and said, 'O my lord, the Kazi, this is my bag, is known, and what is in it matter of renown. For in this bag there be castles, and citadels, and cranes, and beasts of prey, and men playing chess and draughts. Furthermore, in this my bag is a brood mare, and 2 colts, and a stallion, and 2 blood steeds, and 2 long lances, and it containeth eke a lion, and 2 hares, and a city, and 2 villages, and a whore, and 2 sharking panders, and a hemophiliite, and 2 gallows birds, and a blind man, and 2 wights with good sight, and a limping cripple, and 2 lamenters, and a Christian ecclesiastic, and 2 deacons, and a patriarch, and 2 monks, and a Kazi, and 2 assessors, who will be evidence that the bag is my bag.' Quoth the Kazi to me, 'And what sayest thou, O Ali?' So, O Commander of the Faithful, being filled with rage, I came forward and said, 'Allah keep our lord the Kazi.'" And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 296th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Persian contained. So being filled with rage, O commander of the faithful, I came forward and said, Allah keep our lord the Kazi. I had in this my wallet a coat of mail, and a broadsword and armories, and 1,000 fighting rams, and a sheepfold and its pasturage, and 1,000 barking doors, and gardens, and vines, and flowers, and sweet-smelling herbs, and figs, and apples, and statues, and pictures, and flagons, and goblets, and fair-faced slave girls, and singing women, and marriage feasts, and tumult, and clamor, and great tracts of land, and brothers of success, which were robbers, and a company of daybreaker raiders with swords and spears and bows and arrows, and true friends and dear ones, and intimates and comrades, and men imprisoned for punishment, and companions, and a drum, and flutes, and flags, and banners, and boys, and girls, and brides, in all their wedding bravery, and singing girls, and 5 Abyssinian women, and 3 Hindu maidens, and 4 damsels of Al-Medina, and a score of Greek girls, and 80 Kurdish dames, and 70 Georgian ladies, and the Tigris and Euphrates, and a fowling net, and a flint, and steel, and many columned Iram, and 1,000 rogues and pimps, and horse courses, and stables, and mosques, and baths, and a builder, and a carpenter, and a plank, and a nail, and a black slave with his flageolet, and a captain, and a caravan leader, and towns and cities, and 100,000 dinars, and Kufa and Anbar, and 20 chests full of stuffs, and 20 storehouses of victuals, and Gaza and Ascalon, and from Damietta to Al-Swan, and the palace of Kirsa on the Swanan, and the kingdom of Solomon, and from Wadi Nu'man to the land of Khorasan, and Balkh, and Isfahan, and from India to the Sudan. Therein also, may Allah prolong the life of our lord the Kazi, are doublets and cloths, and 1,000 sharp razors to shave off the Kazi's beard, except he fear my resentment and adjudge the bag to be my bag. Now, when the Kazi heard what I had said, and the Kurd avouched, he was confounded and said, I see ye twain be none other than the 2 pestilent fellows, as villains who make sport of Kazis and magistrates, and stand not in fear of reproach. Never did tongue tell, nor ear hear aught more extraordinary than that which ye pretend. By Allah, from China to Saurat Gulian, no from Fars to Sudan, nor from the Wadi Nu'man to Khorasan, was ever heard the like of what ye avouch, or credited the like of what ye affirm. Say, fellows, be this bag a bottomless sea, or the day of resurrection, that shall gather together the just and unjust? Then the Kazi bade them open the bag. So I opened it, and behold, there was in it bread, and a lemon, and cheese, and olives. So I threw the bag down before the Kurd, and ganged my gait. Now when the Caliph heard this tale from Ali the Persian, he laughed till he fell on his back, and made him a handsome present. And men also relate the tale of Harun Al-Rashid and the slave girl, and the Iman Abu Yusuf. It is said that Ja'far the Barmecide was one night carousing with Al-Rashid, who said, O Ja'far, it hath reached me that thou hast brought such and such a slave girl. Now I have long sought for her, and she is passing fair, and my heart is taken up with love of her, so do thou sell her to me. He replied, I will not sell her, O commander of the faithful. Quoth he, Then give her to me. Quoth the other, Nor will I give her. Then Al-Rashid exclaimed, By Zubaydah, triply divorced, and thou shalt not either sell or give her to me? Then Ja'far exclaimed, By my wife, triply divorced, and I either sell or give her to thee. After a while they recovered from their tipsiness, and were aware of having fallen into a grave dilemma, but knew not by what device to extricate themselves. Then said Al-Rashid, None can help us in this strait but Abu Yusuf. So they sent for him, and this was in the middle of the night. And when the messenger reached him, he arose in alarm, saying to him, I should not be sent for at this tide and time, save by reason of some question of the moment al-Islam. So he went out in haste and mounted his she-mule, saying to his servant, Take the mule's nose-bag with thee. It may be she hath not finished her feed. And when we come to the Caliph's palace, put the bag on her, that she may eat what is left of her fodder during the last of the night. And that man replied, I hear and obey. Now when Iman was admitted to the presence of Al-Rashid, he rose to receive him and seated him on the couch beside him, where he was wont to seat none save the Kazi, and said to him, We have not sent for thee at this untimely time and tide, save to advise us upon a grave matter, which is such and wherewith we know not how to deal. And he expounded to them the case. Abu Yusuf answered, O Commander of the Faithful, this is the easiest of things. Then he turned to Ja'far and said, O Ja'far, sell half to her, to the Commander of the Faithful, and give him the other half. So shall ye both be quit of your oaths. The Caliph was delighted with this, and both did he as prescribed. Then said Al-Rashid, Bring me the girl at once. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 297th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Caliph Harun Al-Rashid commanded, Bring me the girl at once, for I long for her exceedingly. So they brought her, and the Caliph said to Abu Yusuf, I have a mind to have her forthright, for I cannot bear to abstain from her during the prescribed period of purification. Now how is this to be done? Abu Yusuf replied, Bring me one of thine own male slaves who hath never been manumitted. So they brought one, and Abu Yusuf said, Give me leave to marry her to him, then let him divorce her before consummation, and thus shall it be lawful for thee to lie with her before purification. The second expedient pleased the Caliph, yet more than the first. He sent for the Mameluke, and when as he came said to the Kazi, I authorize thee to marry her to him. So the Iman proposed the marriage to the slave, who accepted it, and performed the ceremony, after which he said to the slave, Divorce her, and thou shalt have 100 dinars. But he replied, I won't do this. And the Iman went on to increase his offer, and the slave refused till he bid him 1,000 dinars. Then the man asked him, Doth it rest with me to divorce her, or with thee, or with the Commander of the Faithful? He answered, It is in thy hand. Then by Allah, quoth the slave, I will never do it. Nope, never. Hearing these words, the Caliph was exceedingly wroth, and said to Iman, What is to be done, O Abu Yusuf? Replied he, Be not concerned, O Commander of the Faithful. The thing is easy. Make this slave the damsel's chattel. Quoth Al-Rashid, I give him to her. And the Iman said to the girl, Say, I accept. So she said, I accept. Whereon quoth Abu Yusuf, I pronounce separation from bed and board and divorce both between them. For that he hath become her property, and so the marriage is annulled. With this Al-Rashid rose to his feet and exclaimed, It is like of thee that shall be Kazi in my time. Then he called for sundry trays of gold, and emptied them before Abu Yusuf, to whom he said, Hast thou wherein to put this? Iman bethought him of the mule's nose-bag, so he sent for it, and filling it with gold, took it and went home. And on the morrow he said to his friends, There is no easier nor shorter road to the goods of this world, and the next, and that of religious learning. For see, I have gotten all this money by answering 2 or 3 questions. So consider thou, O polite reader, the pleasantness of this anecdote, for it compriseth divers goodly features, amongst which are the compliance of Ja'far to Al-Rashid, and the wisdom of the Caliph, who chose such a Kazi, and the excellent learning of Abu Yusuf. May Almighty Allah have mercy on their souls, one and all. And they also tell the tale of the lover who feigned himself a thief. When Khalid ibn Abdallah al-Qasri was emir of Basra, There came to him one day a company of men dragging a youth of exceeding beauty and lofty bearing and a perfumed attire, whose aspects expressed good breeding, abundant wit, and dignity of the gravest. They brought him before the governor, who asked what it was, and they replied, "This fellow is a thief whom we caught last night in our dwelling house." Whereupon Khalid looked at him, and he was pleased with his well-favoredness and elegant aspect. So he said to the others, "Loose him," and going up to the young man, asked what he had to say for himself. He replied, "Verily the folk have spoken truly, and the case is as they have said." Quoth Khalid, "And what moved thee to this, and thou so noble of port and comely of mind?" Quoth the other, "The lust after worldly good, and the ordinance of Allah, extolled and exalted be He." Rejoined Khalid, "Be thy mother bereaved of thee? Hast thou not in thy fair face and sound sense and good breeding what should restrain thee from thieving?" Answered the young man, "O Amir, leave this talk and proceed to what Allah Almighty hath ordained. This is what my hands have earned, and God is not unjust towards mankind." So Khalid was silent a while, considering the matter. Then he bade the young man draw near him and said, "Verily, thy confession before witnesses perplexeth me, for I cannot believe thee to be a thief. Haply thou hast some story that is other than one of theft, and if so, you need to tell it to me." Replied the youth, "O Amir, imagine not other than what I have confessed to in thy presence. For I have no tale to tell, save that verily I entered these folks' house, and stole what I could lay hands on, and they caught me, and took the stuff from me, and carried me before thee." Then Khalid bade clap him in a goal, and commanded a crier to cry throughout Basra, "Oh yes, oh yes, whoso be minded to look upon the punishment of such an one the thief, and the cutting off of his hand, let him be present tomorrow morning at such a place." Now, when the young man found himself in prison with irons on his feet, he sighed heavily, with tears streaming from his eyes, extemporized these couplets: "When Khalid menaced oft to strike my hand if I refused to tell him of ease, quoth I, far, far from me that I should tell a love which ever shall my heart engrace. Loss of my hand for sin I have confessed to me were easier than to shame her face." The warders heard him, and went and told Khalid, who, when it was dark night, sent for the youth, and conversed with him. He found him clever and well bred, intelligent, lively, and a pleasant companion. So he ordered him food, and he ate. Then, after an hour's talk, said Khalid, "I know indeed that thou hast a story to tell that is no thief's. So when the Kazi shall come tomorrow morning, and shall question thee about this robbery, do thou deny the charge of theft, and avouch what may avert the pain of the penalty of cutting off thy hand. For the Apostle, whom Allah bless and keep, saith, in case of doubt, eschew punishment." Then he sent him back to prison, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 298th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Khalid, after conversing with the youth, sent him back to prison, where he passed the night. And when morning dawned, the folk assembled to see his hand cut off. Nor was there a soul in Basra, man or woman, but was present to look upon the punishment of that handsome youth. Then Khalid mounted in the company of the notables of the city and others, and summoning all four Kazis, sent for the young man, who came hobbling and stumbling in his fetters. There was none saw him, but wept over him, and the women all lifted up their voices in lamentation as for the dead. Then the king bade silence the women, and said to the prisoner, "These folk avouch that thou didst enter the dwelling house and steal their goods. Belike thou stolest less than a quarter of a dinar." Replied he, "Nay, I stole that and more." "Peradventure," replied the Kazi, "thou art partner with the folk in some of the goods." Quoth the young man, "Not so, it was all theirs, and I had no right to it." At this the Khalid was wroth, and rose and smote him on the face with his whip, applying to his own case this couplet: "Man wills his wish to him accorded be, but Allah not accords save what he wills." Then he called for the butcher to do the job, who came forth and drew his knife, and taking the prisoner's hand, set the blade to it, when behold, a damsel pressed through the crowd of women, clad in tattered clothes, and cried out and threw herself on the young man. Then she unveiled and showed a face like the moon, whereupon the people raised a mighty clamor, and there was like to have been a riot amongst them with a violent scene. But she cried out her loudest, saying, I conjure thee by Allah, O Emir, hasten not to cut off this man's hand till thou have read what is on the scroll. So saying, she gave him a scroll, and Khalid took it and opened it and read therein these couplets. Ah, Khalid, this one is a slave of love distraught, and these bowed eyelashes send shaft that cause his grief. Shot him an arrow sped by eyes of mine, for he, wedded to burning love of ills, hath no relief. He hath avowed a deed he never did the while, deeming this better than disgrace of lover life. Bear then, I pray, with this distracted lover mine, whose noble nature falsely calls him a thief. When Khalid had read these lines, he withdrew himself from the people, and summoned the girl and questioned her. And she told him that the young man was her lover, and she his mistress, and that thinking to visit her, he came to the dwelling of her people, and threw a stone into the window to warn her of his coming. Her father and brothers heard the noise of the stone, and sallied out on him, but he, hearing them, caught up all the household stuff, and made himself appear a robber to cover his mistress's honor. Now when they saw him, they seized him, continued she, crying, a thief, and brought him before thee, whereupon he confessed to the robbery, and persisted in his confession, that he might spare me disgrace. And this he did, making himself a thief, of the exceeding nobility and generosity of his nature. Khalid answered, he is indeed worthy to have his desire, and calling the young man to him, kissed him between the eyes. Then he sent for the girl's father, and bespoke him, and saying, O Sheikh, we thought to carry out the law of mutilation in the case of this young man, but Allah, to whom be honor and glory, hath preserved us from this, and now I adjudge him the sum of 10,000 dirhams, for that he would have given his hand for the preservation of thine honor and that of thy daughter, and for the sparing of shame to you both. Moreover, I judge over 10,000 dirhams to thy daughter, for that she made known to me the truth of the case, and I ask thy leave to marry her to him. Rejoined the old man, O Emir, thou hast my consent. So Khalid praised Allah and thanked him, and improved the occasion by preaching a goodly sermon and a prayerful. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 299th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious King, that Khalid praised Allah and thanked him, and improved the occasion by preaching a goodly sermon and a prayerful. After which he said to the young man, I give thee to wife the damsel, such an one here present, with her permission and her father's consent, and her wedding settlement shall be this money, to wit, 10,000 dirhams. I accept this marriage at thy hands, replied the youth. And Khalid bade them carry the money on brass trays in procession to the young man's house, while the people dispersed fully satisfied. And surely, quoth he who tells the tale, never saw a rarer day than this, for that it began with tears and annoy, and it ended with smiles and joy. And in contrast of this story is this piteous tale of Jafar the Barmecide and the bean seller. When Harun Al-Rashid crucified Jafar the Barmecide, he commanded that all who wept or made moan for him should also be crucified. So the folk abstained from that. Now it chanced that a wild Arab who dwelt in a distant land used every year to bring the aforesaid Jafar an ode in his honor, for which he rewarded him with 1,000 dinars. And the Badawai took them, and returning to his own country, lived upon them, he and his family, for the rest of the year. Accordingly, he came with his ode at the wonted time, and finding that Jafar had been crucified, betook himself to the place where his body was hanging, and there made his camel kneel down, and wept with sore weeping, and mourned with grievous mourning, and recited his ode, and fell asleep. Presently Ja'far the Barmecide appeared to him in a vision and said, Verily thou hast wearied thyself to come to us and findest us thou seest. But go to Basra, and ask for a man there whose name is such and such, one of the merchants of the town, and say to him, Ja'far the Barmecide saluteth thee, and biddeth thee to give me 1,000 dinars by the token of the bean. Now when the wild Arab awoke, he repaired to Basra, where he sought out the merchant and found him, and repeated to him what Ja'far had said in the dream. Whereupon he wept with weeping so sore that he was like to depart the world. Then he welcomed the Badawai and seated him by his side, and made his stay pleasant, and entertained him 3 days as an honored guest. And when he was minded to depart, he gave him 1,500 dinars, saying, The 1,000 are what is commanded to thee, and the 500 are a gift from me to thee. And every year thou shalt have of me 1,000 gold pieces. Now, when the Arab was about to take leave, he said to the merchant, Allah upon thee, tell me the story of the bean, that I may know the origin of all this. He answered, In the early part of my life I was poor, and hot beans across the streets of Baghdad to keep me alive. So I went out one raw and rainy day without clothes, enough on my body to protect me from the weather, now shivering for excess of cold, and now stumbling into the pools of rainwater, and altogether in so piteous a plight as would make me shudder with a goose-skin to look upon. But it chanced that Ja'far that day was seated with his officers and his concubines in an upper chamber overlooking the city, when his eyes fell on me. So he took pity on my case, and sending one of his dependents to fetch me to him, said as soon as he saw me, Sell thy beans to my people. So I began to mete out the beans with a measure I had with me, and each one took a measure of beans, filled the measure with gold pieces, till all my store was gone, and my basket was clean empty. Then I gathered together the gold I had gotten, and Ja'far said to me, Hast thou any beans left? I know not, answered I, and then sought in the basket, but found only 1 bean. So Ja'far took from me the single bean, and splitting it in twain, kept 1/2 himself, and gave the other to one of his concubines, saying, For how much wilt thou buy this half bean? She replied, For the tale of all this gold twice told. Whereat I was confounded, and said to myself, This is impossible. But as I stood wondering, behold, she gave an order to one of her handmaids, and the girl brought me the sum of the collected monies twice told. Then said Ja'far, And I will buy the half I have by me for double the sum of the whole, presently adding, Now, take the price of thy bean. And he gave an order to one of his servants, who gathered together the whole of the money and laid it in my basket. And I took it and went my way. Then I betook myself to Basra, where I traded with the monies, and Allah prospered me amply. To him to be the praise and the thanks. So if I give thee every year 1,000 dinars of the bounty of Ja'far, it will be in no wise injure me. Consider then the munificence of Ja'far's nature, and how he was praised both alive and dead, and the mercy of Allah Almighty be upon him. And men also recount the tale of Abu Mohammed Hight Lazybones. It is told that Harun Al-Rashid was sitting one day on the throne of the caliphate, when there came into him a youth of his eunuchy, bearing a crown of red gold, set with pearls and rubies, and all manner of other gems and jewels, such as money might not buy, and bussing the ground between his hands, said, O Commander of the Faithful, the Lady Zubaydah kisseth the earth before thee. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Whereupon quoth her sister Dunyazad, How pleasant is thy tale and profitable, and how sweet is thy speech, and how delectable. And where is this, replied Shahrazad, compared with what I shall tell you both tomorrow night, if I live and the king grant me leave? Thereupon quoth the king to himself, By Allah, I will not slay her until I hear the end of her tale. And so I end my tale for today, until it be morrow.